They do, they do. This is. Labor of love. There is, it's over there. There's a little kitchenette thing with some coffee and hot water. Hello. How are you doing? Good, how are you? That, that it, and I don't spend much time on the road driving from DuPont. Yeah. I see him at that. We should introduce them to one another.
I was just in LA for the weekend and I just your bag? This is my sheet. And you were supposed to police my spot.
Oh, okay.
I want to talk to Jeff. I want the lecture. Yes.
Call this meeting of the Lakewood City Council for Monday, July 1 to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barth has been excused. Councilmember Boki. Councilmember Brandstetter.
Here.
Councilmember Moss has been excused. Councilmember Simpson has been excused. Deputy Mayor Whalen.
Present.
Mayor Anderson.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Now, would you all please rise with me in a moment of silence in honor of our men and women serving overseas, followed by the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So the first item of business is proclamations and presentations. And for this, we have first item is a proclamation recognizing the Washington State legislators of the 28th and 29th District for their outstanding service, dedication, and commitment to the citizens of Lakewood. And I see Senator Oban, Representative Levitt, and Representative Kirby here. Did I miss anybody? Well, if you join me at the podium while we go through our proclamation recognizing you, it would be most appreciated. I think the best part of this for all of us may be that we don't have to drive down to Olympia.
Us too.
So this is always a pleasure, and thank you for your help during the session and as you work for us throughout the year. Whereas the City of Lakewood expresses its appreciation to the Washington State Legislature for their dedication to furthering legislative priorities and strengthening the partnership with the City of Lakewood. And whereas Senator Steve Oban, Representative Christine Kilduff, and Representative Mari Levitt of Legislative District 28, and Senator Steve Conway, Representative Steve Kirby, and Representative Melanie Morgan of Legislative District 29, serving the citizens of Lakewood, have worked diligently in support of the City of Lakewood's 2019-2020 legislative agenda. And whereas the legislators of the 28th and 29th districts adopted a 2019-2021 operating budget, which appropriates $621,000 to the city for the Community Policing Partnership to help respond to calls for police services at Western State Hospital. And whereas the legislators of the 28th and 29th districts adopted a 2019-2021 biennial capital budget, which invests $500,000 to the city for Fort Steilacoom Park Trail access upgrades via the Washington Wildlife and Recreation Program. And whereas legislators of the 28th and 29th districts adopted a 2019-2021 biennial capital budget, which invests $500,000 to the city for Harry Todd Park waterfront improvements via the Aquatic Land Enhancement Account. And whereas the legislators of the 28th and 29th districts adopted a 2019-2021 capital budget, which provides for significant investments in community projects in Lakewood, including $1,015,000 to the city for Fort Steilacoom Park to replace dirt baseball infields with turf baseball infields, and $773,000 to the city for Springbrook Park for environmental restoration of Clover Creek and Springbrook Park expansion. And whereas legislators of the 28th and 29th districts collaborated with South Sound Military and Communities Partnership, SSMCP, South Sound Communities in the City of Lakewood to allocate $500,000 from that 2019-2021 biennial capital budget towards resolving the encroachment in the McCord Field North Clear Zone. Now therefore be it resolved by the City of Lakewood Council on behalf of the citizens of Lakewood, tribute is hereby paid to the legislators of the 28th and 29th legislative districts. Senator Steve Conway, Senator Steve Oban, Representative Christine Kilduff, Representative Steve Kirby, Representative Mari Levitt, and Representative Melanie Morgan for their outstanding service, dedication, and commitment to the citizens of Lakewood, and urges all citizens to join us in extending our appreciation for their public service. Proclaim this first day of July 2019, Don Anderson, Mayor. So I'd like to present you with a proclamation. Thank you. Steve, all the Dons. Yeah. And since we have an extra 2.5 hours tonight, I invite you all to say a couple of words.
Nice,
Nice.
Go ahead.
All
right, thank you.
Well, thank you for the honor and for the hour and a half to speak to you this evening. Just a couple of quick words. You're very well represented down there, and Shelley Helder, I saw her, there she is. She does a fine job for you, and we delight working with her. I do want to say, too, the various budget items that we were able as a delegation to fight for it and get for the City of Lakewood, let's remember, comes from the taxpayers. We thank the taxpayers for their support, financial support that made these very worthy projects we just talked about possible. The last thing I'll say is our work is clearly not done. We were able to accomplish a great deal for Lakewood, but as Councilman Simpson would say if he were here, who came down and testified in support of my bill to ban violent offenders in adult family homes. We have work to do in making Lakewood more safe in that regard, and a lot to do in converting the Western State Hospital from its present makeup of over 800 beds and for civil and forensic into a entirely or almost entirely forensic ward in the coming years. I think that will be a great benefit to the state, and in particular Pierce County and Lakewood, when that footprint of that facility is reduced over half of its size. This is a big policy change the legislature made, and I know that my colleagues here support on a bipartisan basis. We should see over the years better patient care, and I think a safer Lakewood. Thank you.
Well, thank you. This is truly is an honor. I'll put it up with the other ones that I've gotten over the years. This is my 19th year in the legislature. City of Lakewood is one of my favorite things to spend money on because, as you all know, we've said this before, it's kind of a no-brainer to help you because we know that you are going to do the right thing with the help that we give you. You don't ask us for things that are pie in the sky. You ask us for really kind of nuts and bolts things that really affect people's lives. This is local government. I'm a creature of local government. I was term limited off the Tacoma City Council twice. This is where the rubber hits the road. And so if we can, assist you in that regard, we're happy to do it. And you've earned it. Thank you for this. Thank you for the support that you've given us. And it's, again, getting this sort of recognition for doing my job. Heck, it doesn't get better than that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and it's an honor to be here. I want to talk about a couple things, and one, in addition to Ms. Helder, who is a dynamo and really represents the city well, I want to recognize our city manager, John Caulfield. John came down, Mr. Caulfield came down several times during the session to testify on a variety of bills and really has done a yeoman's work in terms of making sure he communicates all of the issues that are really important to the city of Lakewood, so I want to recognize him as well. There were some really good bills. Lakewood cares about veterans, as we all do, and there were some really good bills that focused on infrastructure for our veterans, and I think it's important that we talk about that. In addition to that, we talked about military spouses and military spouses and their families. Lakewood has a large military population and veteran population, and as a result of legislation this year, our military spouses won't need to travel somewhere in order to enroll their schools, but in Washington State, we're a military-friendly place, and we'll be able to enroll students in their schools in Clover Park District and in the districts around the city of Lakewood as a result of this legislation that allows folks to do it from online and from a distance and not have to come from Tennessee or North Carolina or wherever they are to be able to do that. So it's an honor to serve Lakewood. There are some really great projects. The city works very hard, and in particular on our military veterans, and I thank you for all your service. Thank you.
If you'd be so kind, could you join the council up front for a photograph? Or what is left of the council this vacation season? Up here. Up here.
Let's catch up.
We now move to the Clover Park School District report. We have School Director Alyssa Anderson Pearson. Wait.
Good evening, Mayor Anderson, Deputy Mayor Whalen, and council members. As you know, school is out. We're officially in summer, but summer school is in session. So while we've gotten a lot of complaints about the school zones, they are necessary. So those will, so don't speed through there. We celebrated graduations in early June. We had 555 graduates from Clover Park, Lakes, Harrison Prep, and the Open Doors program. 239 students earned awards and scholarships, and there were 65 honor grads. They had a 3.5 GPA or higher. I do want to mention that at Clover Park, they had over $10 million in scholarships. This is huge, and they had by far the highest amount. And I want to mention that it's a team effort between the students and the staff. The staff really helps the students so they can pursue their dreams after high school. As you know, Ron Banner was hired to be the next superintendent. Today was his first day on the job. We'll miss Doug. He was a great interim superintendent, and he didn't skip a beat this past year. We know that Ron will do the same. He has been transitioning in the role since he was hired in February, since he was the deputy superintendent. Under his leadership, he's already made one major administration change. He hired Megan Eakin to support elementary schools. So now it's a 1-to-8 ratio instead of a 1-to-16. So they get a lot more support at the elementary school level with this change. It was decided that the new middle school will be named after Dr. Claudia Thomas. It was a hard decision, which was evident in the split vote between the board members. The district is working on a way to honor Alice Mann at the new school. Since many people did want to keep that as the name, we do want to honor her, so they're working on a way to do that. Evergreen Elementary and Lakeview Hope Academy earned new state education honors. They were honored for closing the gaps and demonstrating improvement among student groups identified for support during the 2017-18 school year. During the summer, there is a meal program for children 18 years and younger at several district schools, and this program is offered through the USDA Summer Food Services Program. And one thing that has been brought up multiple times is our financials. With the recent salary changes throughout the school district, one of the major things is the budget, and if we're okay. That's a concern across the entire state. I do want to assure you that we are in fine financial standing. We finished the year strong. We did have budgeting cuts this past year because we weren't sure how it was going to fully affect us, but we won't need to have those same cuts next year. We have a better understanding with the legislative changes, and those continue to change. So they'll change next year as well, which makes budgeting difficult, but we do feel confident at where we're at. We also formed a facilities advisory committee. We're looking at all of our high-need buildings. As you know, there's a lot of schools that are quite old in Lakewood, and so we are working to figure out the most important changes that need to be made. It was determined not to move forward with the February 2020 capital project levy. We were looking mainly at Clover Park to remodel it, but the cost came back much higher than we had expected. So we're going to reevaluate, add more people to the facilities advisory committee from other schools so everyone has an equal voice. And we may look at moving forward with a potential bond issue in February 2021. But even during all of this, we're going to continue to make changes to buildings as we can, even without the additional funds. And also, Clover Park runs a levy every 4 years that provides vital funding for enrichment programs that aren't fully funded through the state. These include student readiness, safety, and extracurricular activities, as well as many other things. And the next levy is expected to run in 2020. And we are sponsoring Summerfest this year, so we will be there, and we're excited to partner with the city. Have any questions?
Questions? No. Thanks for the information. See you soon. We now move to public comment. This is the section of the agenda where any member of the public may speak to any matter of pertinence to the city, whether or not it is on the agenda. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. The yellow light will come on when you have 30 seconds left. The red line comes on when your time is up. Please identify yourself by name and city of residence, such as Jason Whalen, Milan, Italy. First person who signed up is Mr. Dennis Hagen.
Dennis Haugen, Lakewood, Washington.
Prosecutors say an immigration officer was at the courthouse to take the man into custody following a hearing, but Joseph N. McGregor helped him leave out the back door.
Finally, the executive alleges that afterwards she then lied about it to her superiors when asked about the incident. The justices of the Massachusetts Supreme Court have suspended Judge Joseph without pay until further notice. First up, Kittitas police officer Benito Chavez remains hospitalized.
This police officer was killed by an illegal immigrant.
The driver opened fire, killing Kittitas County Deputy Ryan Thompson. One of the officers returned fire, killing the gunman. A memorial service for this today will be held for Deputy Thompson at 2 o'clock Thursday afternoon. It will be at the Nicholson Pavilion on the campus of Central Washington University in Ellensburg.
This is a theme song for those people who don't want to enforce federal law or obstruct it.
It's a guy, Panamanian guy, Manuel.
Should sing this song to Judge Joseph for helping that criminal get away. She was a judge, municipal judge. Now she's indicted. People were in better shape in those days.
The next person who signed up is Oha Sevilli.
Yes, my name's Brady Lewin, and this is La Oa Civili. We're at 12616
No, it's,
47th.
sir, it's for her turn to speak. You've signed up, you get to speak for yourself.
Okay,
Thank you.
yes.
Please don't take my house, please.
She doesn't speak much English. Yes, I think she's finished.
Okay, thank you. I think she's a boarder. Now, the next person who signed up is Brady Lowine.
Yes. You can stay here if you want. Yes, Oa and I, we live at the house at Springbrook Park, and we've reached out a number of times trying to find out whether the city is going to take our property or not by either eminent domain or condemnation. It's been 2.5 years now, and we've been struggling over there. It's affected my health. Oa doesn't speak the English very much, so she doesn't really know what's going on. But it's affected my job tremendously. I talked to Mary on Friday, and she says that she'll call me tomorrow, and her job will be finished tomorrow, and then she will write a letter and submit it to the city council. So then it belongs to you folks, whether or not you're going to take our property or not. And that's what we're here to try to find out. I know you told me last time, this is not a question and answer type of a program, but I was just trying to reach out once again, and I thought you might want to see the other face of the other senior that lives at this property. Again, when Mary asked me to sign that paper over 2.5 years ago, she said, Brady, you would be absolutely under no obligation. But this thing has been drug out for, like I said, over 2.5 years now. And I'm not quite sure why we can't have a basic civil conversation to where so I can know what to do. My building shed, my permit has been on hold for 2 years now. My place looks like a mess because there's no reason to paint it, put a new furnace system in, windows. We need a new front door. Now, Code Enforcement Officer Bill Mathis is, like I mentioned before, he's been there. He gave me a $1,000 ticket, and he said he'd be back on Wednesday. And so we've been selling stuff. I haven't been working in months, because all we can do, we don't know what's happening with our property. We get no communication from the city. So I'm at the point now to where I'm just selling everything, because I don't know whether you guys are going to take the property or you're going to allow us to live there. That's the bottom line. It's just been a big stress. Thank you for your time. Would there be any questions?
No, but I would note for the people here that normally we don't respond, but the city has been in constant communication with you. The statement that staff has not communicated with you is absolutely false.
I'm sorry.
You can say anything you want about us, but you don't criticize our staff in an untruthful manner.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I had it was not my intent whatsoever. I'm just stating the facts, and that was...
That's a problem, sir. You aren't stating the facts. When you attack our staff as not being communicative when they've been in constant communication with you.
Well, the specificness of the communication was, are you going to take the property? Or are you going to let us live there? Can I paint my house? Can I put windows in? Can I put a new heating system in? Can I...
I'd be happy to talk to you out in the hallway.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your time.
That's all the people who've signed up. If anyone else wishes to speak, please step forward to the mic. Identify yourself. Yeah.
I'm going to be nervous, I think. This is my first time doing this, even though I have been in Lakewood for 54 years.
Could you please identify yourself and place of residence?
I am Christina Ortengren, and I grew up in Lakewood, graduated Clover Park High School, and have lived on Stellicum Lake the vast majority of my life. And what spurred me into action was more tree cutting. After 54 years of living in Lakewood, I still see empty patches where I remember fondly a large tree that used to live there, and it's gone now. And there was a spate of tree cutting on Blossom Lane this recently as a new property owner purchased. I'm talking very mature Doug firs that the osprey and the eagle used to roost in, and they're gone now, so the roosting is gone. So I came to the city and wanted to complain and discussed with the people, and they said that coming up is some land use code discussions where code is going to be revised to require smaller lot sizes based on pressures to avoid urban sprawl. And we want to try to have land use where density is increased in already disturbed areas. I understand that. I applaud that. It will preserve farmland in the rural areas of Pierce County, and it will preserve, hopefully, forest land to offset global warming. However, as we do that, I hope also the code for tree preservation will be addressed. Currently, the law, I believe, says 1,700 square feet. And anybody who has a lot smaller than that can do whatever they want with their trees. In the era of global warming, we want to try to preserve trees. And I'm probably getting close to running out of time. However, let me say this. I believe our urban canopy is important for 4 reasons. Firstly, property values. Lakewood wants to have high property values and high taxes. Mature trees add at least $10,000 to the value of a person's property. A completely area where there's no trees looks bad, values go down. Climate crisis, we cannot be cutting trees, they offset the carbon emissions. Wildlife, we need places for those osprey and eagles to perch. And finally, human well-being. We are happier when there are mature trees around. We need to develop maintaining, so please reduce the tree use from the 1,700 square feet commensurate with your urban density increases. I did it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone
I'll
else?
send some emails and all of that, and I'm going to do research and get data for you because you need that. But
Okay.
this is step 1.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Does anyone else wish to speak at public comment? Does anyone else wish to speak at public comment? Hearing none, I declare public comment closed. We now move to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk.
A, approval of the minutes of the City Council study session of June 10th, 2019. B, approval of the minutes of the City Council meeting of June 17th, 2019. C, approval of claims vouchers in the amount of $2,396,807.33 for the period of May 16th, 2019 through June 14th, 2019. D, approval of payroll checks in the amount of $2,476,111.85 for the period of May 16th, 2019 through June 15th, 2019. E, items filed in the office of the city clerk. 1, Community Service Advisory Board meeting minutes of February 27th, 2019. 2, Lakewood's Promise Advisory Board meeting minutes of April 4th, 2019. And 3, Community Service Advisory Board meeting minutes of April 15th, 2019.
Thank you. Is there any item which any member of the council wishes to have removed from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Whalen, seconded by Mr. Volkey, that we adopt the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We now move to the regular agenda, public hearings and appeals. Madam Clerk.
This is the date set for a public hearing on the 2019 West Pierce Fire and Rescue Proposition Number 1, Maintenance and Operations Levy, Proposition Number 2, Levy Lid Lift, and Proposition Number 3, EMS Levy Lid Lift, coming before the voters on August 6, 2019.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Ms. Wachter.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Heidi Ann Wachter, City Attorney. This is a public hearing for the council to determine whether or not to vote in support of Prop 1 and Prop 2 from West Pierce Fire and Rescue. Procedurally, you have to hold a public hearing before you can determine to take a position on it. And legally, This is the legally soundest way to take any position on this matter. As you know, that getting behind different levies and so forth is not necessarily well supported in the law other than by this means, by the council voting on it. And the public hearing is a first step that's required. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Wachter? Seeing none, thank you very much. So now we'll move to testimony at the public hearing for the 2019 West Pierce Fire and Rescue Proposition 1 Maintenance Operation Levy, Proposition number 2 Levy Lid Lift, and Proposition number 3 EMS Levy Lid Lift, coming before the voters on August 6, 2019. The rules for testifying at this public hearing very similar to those for public comment. You're limited to 3 minutes. The yellow light comes on at 30 seconds. The red light comes on when your time is complete. However, please limit your comments to the subject of the West Pierce fire ballot issues. Again, identify yourself by name and place of residence. The first person who's signed up to speak at this public hearing is Mr. Dennis Haugen.
Dennis Haugen, Lakewood, Washington. The work that was done by the fire chief in estimating why we need these levies was done well. And of course, since fire and police and even emergency hospital service work closely together, I thought that Caulfield did a very good job on explaining this has all been done very well, why we need, what's going on for the next year, actually estimating supply with demand and cost with supply. That was all done well. Except in the middle of this, the state threw a great big monkey in the gears. Sanctuary states. Okay, so we need to open up a discussion, and probably that's on the burden of you as the elected officials as to what it's going to cost to be a sanctuary state on these
Mr.
very
Haugen,
services.
you're off topic of the public hearing. Please stick to the
Off topic?
subject.
Wasn't that supply and demand of the service? Okay.
Next person who is signed up is Mr. Lane Blado.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor Anderson, Deputy Mayor Whalen, fellow city council members. It's another great day to live in the city of Lakewood. My name is Lane Blado. I proudly stand before you today on behalf of citizens for West Pierce Fire and EMS, P.O. Box 98923, Lakewood, Washington 98496, with a phone number 253-596-9533. As you're aware, West Pierce Fire District has 3 ballots on the upcoming August election ballot. Proposition 1, a 4-year EMS maintenance and operations levy. Proposition 2, a regular levy lid lift. And Proposition 3, emergency medical lid lift as well. Collectively, Propositions 1, 2, and 3 provide necessary operational funding for West Pierce Fire and Rescue. These ballot measures represent 85% of West Pierce Fire and Rescue operating budget. The citizens of Lakewood have supported and approved these issues in the past, and we anticipate continued voter approval. On behalf of our committee, I thank you for your consideration and support, and thank you for your upcoming vote, and we ask you to support it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last person on the sign-in sheet is Chief Jim Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor Anderson, Deputy Mayor Whalen, members of the council. Jim Sharp, live in University Place. I'm the fire chief for West Pierce Fire and Rescue. And I would just like to take a moment to say thank you to the council for giving me the opportunity to present the levy to you at a prior meeting, and also for bringing this vital funding measure up in front of the public here this evening. I greatly appreciate the partnership that and collaboration that we have between the city and the fire district in our mutual effort to provide the best services to the community that we both serve. So thank you very much for taking this up this evening.
Thank you. That's all the people who've signed up to speak at the public hearing, but if you wish to speak at the public hearing concerning the West Pierce Fire and Rescue ballot issues, please step forward. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak at this public hearing? Hearing none, I declare the public hearing closed. We now move to the next public hearing. Madam Clerk.
This is the date set for a public hearing on the assessment roll for the American Lake Management District Number 1.
For this, we have Mr. Vigerin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The Lake Management District for American Lake was recently formed to address the milfoil problem in the lake. And the public hearing tonight is for the special assessment roll. The council shall act as a board of equalization and hear objections to the special assessment roll. You may correct, revise, raise, lower, change, or modify the special assessment roll or any part thereof, or set the proposed roll aside and order a new special assessment roll be prepared. In accordance with the RCW, all property owners of record within the district boundary were notified by mail of the time, place, and purpose of the hearing and the annual assessment for their property. We also provided notice in the News Tribune as well as to a number of state Fish and Wildlife, Natural Resources, and Ecology as was required per the RCW. I'll answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Vigerin? Mr. Brandstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Vigerin, Mayor. Mr. Vigerin, the agenda item today is titled a review of the assessment role. And when I read that title on the agenda a week ago, I had the impression that an assessment roll was a list of property owners who were going to be assessed with either a dollar amount or a frontage distance that was going to be used in a formula to determine their assessment. But apparently that's not what roll means, because there was no such list in the packet. So at some point, are we going to vote on an assessment roll? And what really does that look like?
Yeah, I apologize. The roll was supposed to be included in the packet, and I didn't look all the way through the packet, so I'm not sure if it was included. But it's literally a spreadsheet with the names of all the property owners, their addresses, mailing addresses, site addresses, as well as the assessment for each of the properties. And it was intended to be included, and I just checking in with the clerk to see
okay,
what happened there.
All right, thank you. So when we actually have to vote on something, we'll be seeing that. The other thing is that we received today on the dais an email for someone who apparently could not be here for the hearing, but raised a question about the distance of how much shoreline they had. And I appreciate your response that indicated that GIS data is more exact than the county property data that is more or less just deals with straight lines and things to do that. But the packet that I received, okay, has I'm assuming it's a it's an overhead picture or something with some numbers on it. Was that attached to the email by the original sender, or was that attached at the time that you replied?
Yes, I attached a map to reply to the person requesting the information, and it was just the measurement from our GIS and comparing it to the information that they had based on their property records.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Whalen?
Mr. Vigor, a quick question on the staff report. It indicates that the federal properties have agreed to pay for their proportionate share of the treatment costs. Is that at the same 66 cents a foot level?
It's not, it's a proportionate share of the frontage, and I don't remember I know it's $20,000 and change, but I don't remember exactly how we determined it. I don't remember if Paul remembers the details, or Mr. Busich. I just know it was a proportional share of the frontage when we did the initial.
Right, and I'm just kind of curious,
Valuation.
knowing how federal budgets work or don't work, periodically. How are we going to ensure that that's paid either on an annual or biannual basis? How are they budgeting for that, to the best of our knowledge?
Yeah, and that's a good question. The city manager had conversations with I don't remember the gentleman's title, but out at JBLM, Mr. Tom Knight or Thomas Knight, and assured the city that they would participate financially, and just basically told us to send them an invoice.
Okay, and checks in the mail, huh? We're from the federal government, we're here to help you, I guess. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bulkey?
Does that include the VA?
Yes, it was all the frontage for both
Okay, so-
JBLM and the VA.
So, but Tom Knight usually doesn't speak for the VA, right?
The VA apparently leases the property from JBLM or from the Army.
Oh, okay.
And so technically he is representing the VA in this case.
So is the plan to do the treatment late this summer?
Yes.
And then it'll go on it goes with the property tax bills in the.
This year, the city's actually going to be doing the billing because we weren't able to get it into the county in time.
Okay.
But in future years, the county will be collecting it as part of the taxes.
So this year, we'll actually send out bills to everybody?
Correct.
Okay,
From our
in
finance
the hope of
department.
collecting, okay.
Yeah, I just sent an email to finance today, in fact, with that
Okay.
information.
Okay, good, thanks.
It's like utilities. Any other questions? Then we will move to testimony on the public hearing. Again, the rules are the same as for the last one, except the topic is limited to hearing on the assessment role for American Lake Management District Number 1. You have 3 minutes to speak. No one has signed up indicating they wish to speak on this topic. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this topic at public hearing? Is there anyone who wishes to speak regarding the assessment role for the American Lake Management District Number 1? Seeing and hearing none, I declare this public hearing closed. And we'll move to our next public hearing, Madam Clerk.
This is the date set for a public hearing on the renewal of interim regulations governing wireless service facilities.
For this, we have Ms. Beer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Tiffany Spear with the Community and Economic Development Department. In your packet, starting at page 82, you'll see just a brief memo from me, and then the adopted ordinance 703, which the council adopted in January in reaction to the FCC's declaratory ruling 18-133 regarding wireless service facilities. This was an emergency ordinance that was adopted January 21, and then the public hearing was held on February 4th. And the life of that ordinance was 6 months, so we're coming up on that a week from, or several weeks from now, I should say. Because the final ordinance language is intended to be part of Title 18A's update when that comes to you later this fall, we are simply requesting that the council renew the interim ordinance once again, and so tonight is the public hearing on renewing that ordinance. Once this moves forward to potential action by the city, there will be a new ordinance in front of you to adopt. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions from Ms. Spear? Hearing none, we move to the testimony for this public hearing. Again, the rules are the same. You have 3 minutes, up to 3 minutes to speak with respect to the renewal of interim regulations governing wireless service facilities. No one has signed up to speak at this hearing. Does anyone wish to speak at the public hearing regarding renewal of interim regulations governing wireless service facilities? If you do, please step forward. Seeing and hearing none, I declare this public hearing closed. Thank you. We move to the next public hearing. Madam Clerk.
And this is the date set for a public hearing on the 2019 Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Map Amendments.
For this, we also have Ms. Spear.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My apologies. We're trying to get a PowerPoint up that's very brief, but essentially, this is also a public hearing based on something that you considered starting earlier this year, the 2019 Comprehensive Plan Amendment docket. On page 122 of your packet, you'll see the start of the memo from me to you, and the first several pages of it are responses to questions that the council asked at last week's study session. Very quickly, though, with the PowerPoint for the public's benefit, here is a map of the location of all of the proposed amendments. There's a total of 13, and most of them deal with rezoning, but there are several text amendments to both Title 18A and also the comprehensive plan itself. There are 3 of the map amendments that involve at least one private applicant with or without also city involvement, and then the remainder of the map amendments were generated by the city. There are, again, as I said, amendments proposed for code as well as the map and the text from the comprehensive plan. The criteria that are used to decide on the council's part whether or not to approve a comprehensive plan amendment are listed here, and they're also included in Lakewood City Code. There was an analysis done based on 2018's downtown sub-area plan regarding housing capacity and how that might be affected for the city overall if all of these amendments requested were to pass. And there are, at the bottom line here on this slide, you'll see if you were to take into consideration both the 2019 comprehensive plan amendments, but then also the increased capacity with the downtown sub-area plan adopted last year on the right-hand side, regardless of what happens with amendment number 06, which relates to the Springbrook neighborhood, all of these, as a result, would come to a net increase in housing units for the city, not a decrease. So because of the downtown plan, this year's comprehensive plan amendments stand well. And that's all I'm going to say from that. So coming back to page 122 of your packet, if there's any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, number 1 relates to the question regarding time frame for the Thorn Lane corridor improvements, which relate to the Tillicum application. Then beginning on page 124, you'll see answers to a second question, which was the number of acres of industrial business park if Amendment 03 was adopted, and that would be an increase of 20.23 additional acres. And then the location of the opportunity zones and residential target areas nearby the Springbrook neighborhood are provided to you in maps, pages 124 and 125. Other than that, I can answer any questions for you.
Any questions for Ms. Spear? Mr. Brandstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Spear, could you back up to the slide that had the summary of the Planning Commission recommendations?
That's going to be in your packet, and that is on page 246.
I guess when I looked at the slide that was on the screen, that it seemed to me that the Springbrook neighborhood item only said approve, and it didn't, the slide that was on the screen before didn't say option 1. Could you just refresh us what option 1 is? Because as I recall, there were 4 options, and it was a city-initiated
Yes, so Councilmember Branstad is referring to application number 2019-06, and that begins on page 166 of the packet. And there's an analysis in there, rather than a specific recommendation from the department regarding the city's or council's request to consider rezoning and redesignating all of the properties within the highlighted area on that map on page 166 to industrial. Rather than a single recommendation, 4 options were provided by the staff, and those begin on page 171 at the bottom. So option 1 is status quo, or leaving things alone, and that is one that is recommended by the Planning Commission. This is an option that would take into account what has happened since the docket started through the path, which was Public Works here at the city is going through a process verifying the floodplain and the floodway within the Springbrook area. And that is anticipated to take about a year. It's underway, but we're anticipating it will be finished in time for perhaps the 2020 amendment cycle. Option 1 leaves things as it is in Springbrook neighborhood to allow that data to come back to the city and to the council to inform a decision should the council decide to wait. Option 2, on page 173, it would be to reduce the zoning density but remain in residential. Option 3 would be to rezone things open space. And then option 4 is the one that reflects the council's request of redesignation to industrial.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Ms. Spear? Thank you. We now move to the public testimony portion of the public hearing. This is when any member of the public may speak to the comprehensive plan and zoning amendments which are being proposed. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. The yellow light comes on at 30-second warning. Red light comes on when your time is complete. Please identify yourself by name and city of residence, such as Paul Bulkey, Lakewood, Washington. First person who's signed up is Mr. Dennis Haugen.
Dennis Haugen, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 100,000. There's no, nothing on that zoning map for tent cities. But with situations being as they are, a sanctuary state and whatnot, you could be suddenly blasted with a lot of people that'll be laying on the ground and putting up their tents. There's no discussion in this plan about what to do, but we are a sanctuary state, And you can go and look at certain sanctuary cities and, you know, states and what happens in towns. You don't just hear from the illegal immigrants, you hear from the residents. And some of them across the United States are quite angry because their town suddenly gets inundated and you can't get into the hospital because the emergency doors are closed and everything is overloaded and you can't get services. I know this is a topic you don't want to talk about, but it's definitely something elected officials have to talk about. Because that group you have in here tonight, I asked them, they hardly know what they voted for. And you don't avert certain catastrophes unless you plan for them.
Next person who signed up is Kathy Hargrave.
We would like Stephen Nielsen, the property owner, to speak first, and then I'll speak second.
Okay, Stephen Nielsen is also signed up. Mr. Nielsen, you're next.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Deputy Mayor and Council. I'm the property owner that's listed in the item tonight, and I just wanted to introduce myself. I've been a business owner and operator in Lakewood for many years, 4 generations actually, and we have the zoning application along Bridgeport near Walmart. And I just wanted to say that we have requested a C2 zoning. And having owned the property for all of my life, my mother's life and my grandfather's life, paid a lot of taxes, and we're very excited about some development in that corridor. We owned the property under Walmart and spent a lot of time working that out. And we think that these, well, I guess the message I want to say to the council and to the city is that we're a proud member of the city. I operate 5 companies. We currently pay family living wages for over 145 people, many of them in the city of Lakewood. And we're a proud member of the community and support it in any way we can. We want to continue to own the property. It's our intent to, we didn't subdivide the property. We made one ownership piece so that we could put as many as maybe 3 tenants on that property and isolate them with leases and control the leases over time so that the improvements would be good. We don't want group homes. We don't want things like that. And I sent a letter to the staff who looked at this and said, we're happy to do a deed restriction that would restrict things that the city may not want on the property. We're happy to do that. We're citizens of the city. We're good custodians of the land. We intend to keep the land. And as a history, a lot of these aggregates that are in these blocks and probably this concrete we're standing on came out of our gravel mines. No longer from Lakewood, but from Nisqually. So we're very proud to be here, be strong, be surviving, and be a member of the community and support any way we can. And I would really like the council's support and the staff support in saving us some property taxes on the unimproved land that we have so we can continue to hold it. And I request the C2 designation. And I defer to the professionals, our land use person, and Kidder Matthews, who we rely on to bring tenants to the property. And these two have made very clear that this is the way we should go with this property. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Then we'll go back to Kathy Hargrave.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council. I'm Kathy Hargrave. I'm with Sitson Hill Engineers in Tacoma, and my firm prepared the application for the rezoning of this property. We would like it rezoned from I2 to C2 and the comprehensive plan designation to go from I to corridor commercial. This is consistent with the Planning Commission's resolution number 2019-03 with respect to the proposed Bridgeport comp plan and zone plan map amendments. One of the reasons that we asked for the C2 designation was because the proposed uses and the interested parties that have approached the real estate professionals, their uses are allowed or permitted outright in that zone, and you don't have to go through an administrative use permit or a conditional use permit for those uses. And if there's concern that, this is kind of the camel's nose under the tent, I would assure you that on the north side of Interstate 5 along the Bridgeport corridor, there is no other situation quite like this. There are no other industrial zone properties to be buffered from neighborhood type or residential type properties. But we see that C2 zone as a logical and natural buffer between industrial uses that are going to remain for the foreseeable future and any type of residential developments that might come in around them. And indeed, when you look at the South Tacoma Way area where you have the C2 zone, that's also providing somewhat a buffer from the I1 or industrial 1 uses from some of the other residential type of uses. So we feel it's very consistent with what you have done in the past. We don't feel that it opens up, any type of precedent per se, because there are no other like properties along that Bridgeport Way corridor. So we're asking you to, thoughtfully consider our request for the corridor commercial and the C2 zone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next person who signed up is Josh Kubitson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank members of the council. My name is Josh Kabitzo. I'm with AHBL in Tacoma, and we are representing Clover Park School District, part of the Woodbrook map amendment. And we are looking forward to the eventual approval, and we want to take a moment to thank planning staff, planning commission, and members of the council for doing their due diligence on the map amendments. So, thank you.
Next is Jeff Kraft.
Thank you, Mayor Anderson, Deputy Mayor Whalen, and council members. Jeff Kraft with Kidder Matthews. I work with Nielsen Pacific LTD on the requested zoning change on Bridgeport. I work for Kidder Matthews Commercial Services. They come to us to find basically highest and best use, who's available out there, what can they do within the parameters that the Nielsen's have given us. The Nielsen family, as he mentioned, has had this property for, I believe, close to 80 years, and they plan on having it for another 80 or more. It's going to stay in the family. They plan on keeping it there and having future generations run it. They are not developers. The reason we requested the C2 zoning change, as Kathy mentioned, was primarily that is the interest we're getting and the demand out there. It's the only zoning change that fully allows the drive-through facilities on eating and drinking establishments level 1, 2, and 3, which is the demand that we're getting. And we actually have formal offers that I could show you. I probably couldn't give you copies, but I'm happy to do so. Some of the feedback that we've been getting, and staff's been very helpful in preparing us and sharing comments with us, but some of the feedback we're getting is that this zoning change is not consistent with the zoning across the street, which is primarily apartments. That's correct. And I submitted a packet that basically covers the majority of all Walmarts throughout Puget Sound. I discounted Eastern Washington. It shows probably 80–85% of those Walmarts have pads with drive-throughs. That is what we're requesting. It's very simple. Mr. Nielsen mentioned that another hurdle that we are running into is potential use within that zoning of group homes. We have no intention of doing group homes. Nothing wrong with group homes, it's just that they don't pencil, especially on new construction. He is not a developer. If it's a major concern of the cities, we're happy to discount that from on title and say, we won't do it. So we will put our money where our mouth is there. So you've got the rest of my packet, and we think that those are the two highest and best use based on demand. That's what we'd like to see, and I think that's consistent with most every Walmart in the state. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next person is Bob Warfield.
Mayor Anderson, Deputy Mayor Whalen,
Mr. Bocci, and Mr. Brandstetter. Good evening. I'm Bob Warfield. I live at 143 Candlewick Drive, and I'm representing Candlewick Glen Homeowners Association. So if I need an extra 30 seconds, I hope that's permissible. I'll do my best to stick with the 3 minutes. I want to begin by some kudos. First, late congratulations to Ms. Schumacher for her promotion. and praise and appreciation to our first responders, Lakewood Police and West Pierce Fire. They've had a busy afternoon, not far from the site we're discussing presently. I also want to commend the city for its attention and continued development interest in Springbrook, and thank you all, whomever, for the excellent website that's been developed for the city. By restating the obvious, I hope to emphasize the important regarding this rezone request. We may acknowledge a classic tension between the interest, wealth, and prospects of a property owner and those of environment, neighborhood, and community. That further consideration of this proposal to benefit the long-term interests of all parties is my purpose. Over time, things change, and over the past 40 years, telling examples instruct the future. I'd like to briefly show you one, and that is the diagram that you have. This shows an area that was developed by Holly Homes after the property was mined and sold by Holroyd, now Nielsen Pacific. I think the orientation is fairly clear, but the interesting thing about it is that this was a proposal in 1979 for a neighborhood park, which was essentially approved under the master plan of Pierce County at the time. And it didn't go very far, but another sideline is that I approached Jack Holroyd at the time and with a request that he consider this and a plan which met legal requirements that it could be segmented into 10 sections and donated to the county for parks over a period of 10 years against tax benefits to the company. Obviously, that didn't occur. In geological time, it was not all that long ago when the last glacial retreat produced Lone Star lode for sand and a substantial gravel mining operation which Holroyd, now Nielsen Pacific, has prospered. Proximate are 20 acres of an 1890 land grant awarded by Benjamin Harrison, number 23, which became Candlewick Glen, the sweetest little neighborhood in our fair city. With resource extracted in the current epoch of local land use evolution and close to home, we now have regionally scaled retail anchored along Bridgeport Way by Fred Meyer and Walmart, both previously Holroyd properties. Transitional land use in the question before you now concentrates Nielsen Pacific property interests realized by concrete and form block operations as existing industrial use shows together with prospects for this speculative development. Permitted development indicated by the municipal code freights broad land use outcomes. At a glance, one can imagine that barring thoughtful consideration by council and applied vision of staff, practically anything is possible by waiver if necessary, short of an airport. Poorly documented but durable estimation, the evolution of properties comprising around 90 acres, as I recall, and aggregating all that is surrounded by Bridgeport, Lakewood Drive, Custer, and 75th south of Walmart and Meadow Park Golf, envisioned a planned urban neighborhood core with mixed-use residential, commercial, and park pedestrian amenities. On a hopeful day, one might even imagine space for limited recreational activity, on-street parking, a small pedestrian mall, and perhaps an upscale dine-in restaurant or two. This vision has for years lain in undecided balance against introducing another big box store, which has always seemed to conflict with the central locus of an emerging Lakewood center following incorporation. That's the background. So my argument tonight is to support that progressive urban vision, much as you now imagine a progressive urban design framework for Tillicum, and hopefully may soon for a similar rebirth of Lakeview. I respectfully urge your reservation in permitting further piecemeal patchwork development where drive-through commerce invites pass-by non-resident urban traffic and further neighborhood fragmentation. and I respectfully counsel patience and reconsideration by proponents for this rezone toward a grander vision for that time, though it may now seem remote or be denied, when response to achieving related efficiencies of materials and production out and materials in and production out, and the changing growth profile of regional distribution will make relocation of the surprisingly portable industrial activity currently operating here a virtual certainty. In that regard, if you believe industrial concrete will serve the highest, best use of the property development values here 40 years from now, I respectfully submit you have not been paying attention to the past 40. To this, I wish to point to the advantages of establishing Meadow Park Road west through to Lakewood Drive, the obvious need for improving the bike-friendly 75th Street, and preservation of the attributes of welcoming transition driving south from the Lakewood Gateway, rising from Leech Creek on Bridgeport Way toward the central commercial life of our city. I thank you for your attention, and I appreciate the proponents for this being present to hear my presentation. If you have any questions, please.
No questions.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you. That's all the people who've signed up to testify at the public hearing on the 2019 Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Map Amendments. Does anyone else wish to speak on this topic at the public hearing? If there's anyone else who wishes to speak at the public hearing on the 2019 Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Map Amendments, please step forward. Seeing and hearing none, I declare the public hearing closed. We now move to resolutions. Resolution number 2019-14, Madam Clerk.
Resolution number 2019-14, expressing support for the 2019 West Pierce Fire and Rescue, Proposition number 1, Maintenance and Operations Levy, Proposition number 2, Levy Lid Lift, and Proposition number 3, EMS Levy Lid Lift, coming before the voters on August 6, 2019.
For this, we have Ms. Wachter.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Heidi Wachter for the City of Lakewood. As previously indicated, one of the predicate steps if the council wishes to take a position on such levies, they're required to hold a public hearing. Tonight you have held that public hearing. It is completely within the authority of the council to choose to support, decline to support any of these measures by your vote. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Wachter? Entertain a motion. So moved. It's been moved by Mr. Whalen, seconded by Mr. Bulkey, that we adopt resolution number 2019-14, expressing support for the 2019 West Pierce Fire and Rescue ballot propositions. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Branstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly urge that we do express the support that the resolution is stating. I think that while it's information that we've heard that this is important to sustain, West Pierce Fire and Rescue, that I think that there is a great deal of value to them being able to sustain their current level or increase their current level, and to be able to remain a Class 3 fire department, which impacts insurance rates and the actual safety and the ability of the professional response that's available to the citizens of our city. So I would encourage us to actually pass this resolution and do that.
Mr. Bulkey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'll second that. Chief Sharp came here a few weeks back and really defined, I think, a need. Their calls keep going up mainly because of aid calls, and we realize that. I think we realize that. We do a lot of work with aid calls too, and and even though the population of the area isn't growing, the aid calls continue to go up, and I think Chief Sharp did a very nice job in presenting why that's occurring. and why it's necessary to make these investments going forward. And I'd also say I would agree with his comments earlier tonight that we have a very good working relationship with West Pierce. I mean, we, being a new city, we don't have all the levers, right? We're not like an older city with our own water department and our own fire department. So it's very important to have a good working relationship. And I think that over the last few years, if you've seen all the work that they did with smoke detectors and whatnot, and then our rental safety program and how that's helped improve the lives and safety of individuals who rent in our community, that it's been a very good working relationship for a number of years, and I really think that they deserve our support.
Mr. Whalen.
I echo the desire to support West Pierce. They've done a fine job. They continue to do great work for the citizens, despite my reservations a bit on mission creep with the increased work where they're providing a lot more medical services than one might have thought that a fire department would have done 20 years ago. It is certainly the services that the community desires and has expressed a need for, and they've done a great job of accommodating that need with the resources they have. So I'm very supportive of it. And speaking to the partnership between the City of Lakewood and West Pierce, as I recall the review of the numbers, as a result of the work we have all done collectively together to enhance the economic development growth within the city, the actual rate, notwithstanding the 3 proposals that are on the ballot, if all pass, which we hope they will, the rate per thousand, I understand, will actually decrease, or the level of taxation that the average homeowner will experience will actually decrease from what is currently being paid. You can either say yes or no, Chief Sharp, but I think that was the number there. So effectively, that means that we're providing more services at a fair rate, perhaps even less than they're currently paying.
Yeah, thank you. Well, at risk of being an echo chamber, I would second and third the comments that have been made. I think it behooves us to support the fire district's request for funding. Our highest priority is public safety. The fact that a good portion of the public safety services in the city of Lakewood are performed by another entity should not cause us to waver from our support for that important facet of our citizens' well-being. I think there are a couple of things that people don't realize about fire districts and funding, at least the general population isn't as aware as they should be. One is, the better your fire district you have, the lower your insurance rate. So there is some return directly to your pocketbook out of having an excellent fire district like we have here with West Pierce. Also, that in our strange municipal funding arrangements in the state of Washington, that the sources of funds available to fire districts are extremely limited, and they really only have the one avenue here, and that's going to the ballot on these type of measures. So I think I can speak for all of us saying that you have our unwavering support. I call for the question. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. And we will thank you, gentlemen, for all you do, and good luck with the measure. We now move to resolution number 2019-15.
Resolution number 2019-15, creating an advisory committee for the American Lake Management District Number 1 and establishing the duties thereof.
Mr. Vigerin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The American Lake Management District Number 1 was recently created. This resolution establishes an advisory committee to represent the district property owners and advise the City Council on the proposed annual work program for American Lake. The committee will consist of 5 regular members, 3 members from private property owners, 1 member from Washington Military Department at Camp Murray, and 1 from the city. The committee will also have 1 non-voting member representing the federal properties of JBLM and the VA Medical Center. Private property owners will submit applications for appointment by the City Council. Positions representing the city, Camp Murray, and the federal properties will be appointed by their organizations with concurrence from the City Council. And Public Works Engineering staff will provide administrative support for the advisory committee. I'll answer any questions you might have.
So one question I do have before we get to the real substance is who put the agenda order together? Because you realize with the zoning matter, the levy, and this matter, we went from earth to fire to water.
Good job, Brandon.
So any questions for Mr. Vigran? Mr. Branstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Vigran, so the purpose of the matter before us is to create an advisory committee that the city has created a variety of advisory committees that we have in the city, and normally they've been created by ordinance. So why is this one created by resolution?
That's a good question. I don't know if that was in the RCW that way, or if it was just at the direction of the city attorney's office. If it was why we did a resolution versus an ordinance.
Councilmember Branstetter, members of the council, in my discussions with Eileen McCain, my understanding is that it was a resolution in the RCW. I'm not sure why. I can't explain what the legislature does at any particular juncture, but the legislative act by the council will be sufficient to have the effect that's being requested.
So I'm not quite sure that I understand the nuance. Clearly ordinances and resolutions aren't the same. Most of our advisory committees, the ones that I've been engaged with, have their duties described in an ordinance that's then created, and that includes much of what is included in the document that's attached that makes up this resolution. And I'm just concerned that it seems inconsistent unless we think that the ordinance that established the district served the role of the ordinance establishing the committee, and this resolution is merely flushing that out. Seems unusual to me.
Any other questions for Mr. Vigran? Entertain a motion.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Bulkey, seconded by Mr. Whalen, that we adopt resolution number 2019-15. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Branstetter.
I'm going to vote in favor of the resolution, but I would like there to just be perhaps some future look at whether or not we should actually have an ordinance instead, but we can move forward with the resolution at this point.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion carries. We now move to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business to come before the council?
No, Mayor.
Any new business to come before the council?
No, Mayor.
Then we move to reports by the city manager, Mr. Caulfield.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. A few updates for you. We just recently initiated a contract with Pierce County to begin doing road striping throughout the city, as well as pavement markings. So that'll get underway here in the next couple of weeks and continue into the summer. Likewise, our Custer Road overlay project, the striping on that is expected to occur sometime next week and be completed by
mid-July, if not sooner. We also heard from WashDOT that they plan on, at this point in time, demolishing the current Berkeley Bridge beginning in December of 2019 because the new interchange is expected to be up and operational sometime in the latter part of 2019. Our traffic control program, the key traffic calming project that's currently underway in 2019 is we're looking to install a couple of speed radar signs over on Elwood Drive in the vicinity of Dresden and Angle Lane. So those radar signs are currently on order and are expected to be here in the next month or so, and then will be installed. So summer's here, the sun's out, school's out, people are out enjoying themselves. Our parks are full of participants and a number of activities, including down at a couple of our beaches, one at American Lake Park and Harry Todd Park. And both of those parks are going to have lifeguards on duty from noon to 7:30 p.m., Monday through Friday through Labor Day. And today was the first day that they were on duty. However, we also have swim at your own risk signs that are posted at those sites, so when lifeguards aren't on duty, if people decide that they want to go swimming. Also, the Lakewood YMCA is going to be, again, providing free swimming lessons on Fridays to park visitors at American Lake Park, and the city also will have life vests out there for folks to borrow them if they so wish. Over at the AWC conference last week, I think it was on Wednesday morning, the state legislature's Joint Transportation Committee, they had a meeting, and the first item on the agenda was an update from WashDOT regarding the NTSB report specific to the 2017 Amtrak Cascades derailment. They being the WashDOT secretary and the WashDOT Rail CEO provided a briefing. I have emailed you that presentation. In summary, apparently speed played a role in the derailment. They have 90 days to, they being WashDOT have 90 days to respond to the NTSB's recommendations, and I believe, if I recall, there's 26 of them. Also, WashDOT, among other things, during the testimony that they provided, they apparently don't have authority over a lot of the things that NTSB would like to see happen as it relates to other agencies, so there seems to be some confusion there. There seemed to be a lot of this finger-pointing going back and forth on that. Myself and our team are going to be meeting with the WashDOT CEO tomorrow afternoon to hopefully get a little bit of insight in terms of when and if they plan on returning Amtrak to the bypass rail either sometime this year or the early part of next year sometime. During our last conversation, it was to be determined, and actually that's what we heard on Wednesday morning as well, still to be determined. But certainly, if I have anything to report, I will certainly pass that on to you. We continue to partner with Pierce County on several operational issues. One is vectoring services. They're going to do a trial run here in the city to see if it would be more cost-effective for Pierce County to provide those services versus a current contract we have. We also work with them on an analysis to see if it would be cost-beneficial to contract with the county for traffic signal maintenance services. The results of that analysis showed that the time being, it's still more cost-effective for us to do that in-house. We're also working with Pierce County on contracting with them for their online PALS Permit Plus system, and we're hoping to be able to get something in place with them by the latter part of this year, early 2020. They have a really proven system that we would like to piggyback on. Also, we being the county and the city of Lakewood, we're going to reach out to some of our other neighboring cities to see if there are other areas from a regional standpoint we can talk about as it relates to delivery of services and sharing services as it relates to public works and/or development services. So that was one of the key outcomes in some of the work that the county and the city of Lakewood have done so far. As of last Tuesday, all 6 legislative authorities that signed on to the original ILA creating South Sound 911 adopted revised ILAs to change the governance structure of South Sound 911. And so the next step is for the Tacoma City Council to approve the charter, which is expected to, I believe, occur tomorrow. There's a couple more steps that need to occur, but it's well on its way. The Public Works Engineering Department recently met with TIB staff to talk about, Transportation Improvement Board, to talk about the criteria and the types of projects that they're looking for in the next round of grant applications. In summary, we're going to be submitting for 3 grants. One is Custer Road from Bridgeport to Lakewood Drive, essentially a full rebuild of that roadway. The cost estimate is $6 million. The second is 100th Street from Lakeview to South Tacoma Way, including a short piece on 40th that the federal government wouldn't fund a couple of years ago. The estimated cost on that project is $4.75 million. And then the third project is actually an infill of sidewalks on Lakewood Drive between Steilacoom Boulevard and Flett Creek Crossing. And the estimated cost on that is $585,000. So those are the 3 projects that we got some positive feedback from TIB that we think will compete effectively. And so we're working on that right now. And the submittal for those applications is August 15th. Also, our Public Works Engineering Director, and I know I can't call him new anymore, but him and his team, they continue to do a review of, a number of activities and agreements, and one of the ones that he recently completed was a review of our franchises that we have with our utility providers. And what he found out and determined was that there are a couple that currently are not playing by the rules as outlined in the franchise, specifically as it relates to obtaining right-of-way permits when they do work in the city public right-of-way. There's a real simple solution to that, which is an annual right-of-way permit. So Mr. Busich and the staff are going to be reaching out to those 2 utility providers and get that squared away here in the near future. One of them is Lakeview Light and Power, and the other is Pierce County Sewers. And then as far as your calendar goes, July 6th, this coming Saturday, Samoa Cultural Day at the Tacoma Dome. And then a week from Saturday, July 13th, is Summerfest and the Triathlon. We had the first Legacy Plan open house last week. The second one is scheduled for the latter part of this month, July 25th. And then there's a third one scheduled for August 1st. And then after Summerfest, our summer concert series will kick off on July 18th at Fort Steilacoom Park at the park in the pavilion. And then, Mayor, if I might, I'd like to address the public comment, if you'd like me to, regarding the property. So first of all, Mayor, thank you very much for your words regarding Ms. Dodsworth. She has been in constant and regular communication with Mr. Lewine. As a matter of fact, on June 13th, after other conversations, she followed up with a letter on behalf of Pierce County Conservation Futures, making an offer for Pierce County Conservation Futures to acquire his property for $100,000. This is $10,000 over the appraisal of the property, which is $90,000. And again, those have been regular and ongoing communications that Ms. Dodsworth has had. Last week, as a courtesy, she followed up with him because Pierce County asked that a deadline be provided in a letter, and the deadline date was this Friday, June 28th. And so Ms. Dodsworth, again, as a courtesy, followed up with him. And once again, and this has been an ongoing issue, he responded, I didn't receive your letter. In the past, he's responded, I didn't receive your letter, I haven't received your email, I haven't received your voicemails. And so Ms. Dodsworth hand-delivered a copy of the letter to him and put it in his hand. He did state that he would need a little bit more time than Friday, and so Ms. Dodsworth said, fine, I will give you until Tuesday, which is tomorrow. So he has until Tuesday to determine whether or not he wants to sell that property for, again, $10,000 above the appraised value of the property, for which we have been working with him for over 2 years on. On a parallel track, that property is a significant code enforcement case that's currently underway. He has been issued a citation, and long story short, he needs to get that property squared away and bring it into standard as it relates to our code and our community standards, and he has until, I believe it's Wednesday or Friday, to do that. If not, it's likely he will be in front of our municipal court judge regarding the condition of his property. But again, those are two separate and distinct activities. So that's where we are. Oh, and I think as mayors, the council's aware, we did acquire the two adjoining properties, and the reason that we're looking to acquire the properties is to continue the expansion of Springbrook Park.
And I observed one of those properties is being used by this gentleman.
That's correct, and that is part of the code enforcement issue because his activities have now bled over onto city-owned property.
As in addition to an unlicensed business, and now it appears a rental property.
So that's,
in fact, is not registered with.
That's correct, and actually, that's all new information to us, that he's operating a business out of there because he does not have a business license either with the city, the state, nor does he have a home occupation permit, which would be required to operate out of there. So he has none of that.
Mr. Whalen.
So on that particular subject, if the gentleman elects not to accept the offer, which is funded with Conservation Futures monies, right? If he elects not to accept the offer, and should the city elect to proceed with a different option, such as condemnation, then we don't get to use Conservation Futures monies. Is that correct?
That would be correct. Pierce County Conservation Futures has made it perfectly clear that they will not exercise eminent domain action on him for the acquisition of that property.
Right. I mean, a municipality like the city would have to do that, but the funding would have to come from our coffers as opposed to using the Conservation Futures monies.
Theoretically, yes, Deputy Mayor.
Okay.
And as a point of clarification, that is why the city has not made any plans for what happens until we know whether or not he is accepting the offer from existing money, because there's no money after that. We would have to figure out how to put that together before we'd go anywhere with it.
Is the 110 on the table all Conservation Futures?
The 100,000 is all Conservation Futures, Deputy Mayor.
100,000.
100,000, yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
And if, I assume that appraisal is all land value? Is that correct?
No, actually, the appraisal is, it's getting old. And so it's the land and the structure. However, when the appraisal was done, the appraiser was not able to get inside the building. So the appraisal was done as a, based on an observation from the street.
So presumably it may be less value if it's abated.
That could well be, Mayor.
So you'll
Yes, sir.
have a lower value with a lien on it. Any other questions for Mr. Caulfield? If not, we'll go to council comments. Mr. Volke. Ransfitter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did attend the Association of Washington City's annual conference in Spokane last week. As always, it was a busy and far-reaching options of things that you might have learned there. You could only go to so much. But a couple of things of interest is it certainly did, there was a lot of discussion within the AWC community about aggressively pursuing getting approval for cities and towns to have tax increment financing. Some recognition that it will take some time before you can get the complete tax increment financing package through the constitutional amendment and then legislative phase, and that there might be some interim things to do that. But from the incoming officers for AWC this year and from the AWC staff, there was much more assertiveness to boldly work in that direction than there have been in past years for a while. One of the things that occurred at the conference was the Washington Department of Transportation testified before the Joint Legislative Transportation Committee that held their meeting at the conference site in conjunction with the conference. I provided you a copy of what was the framework of their presentation to legislators. The meeting was held indoors, so there were no buses available to throw the FRA under, but that was generally the concept. And with respect to the recommendations from the National Transportation Safety Board that we are interested in seeing carried through and followed on, WashDOT was pretty adamant that the ones that were ascribed to then by the national, that they had no authority to act on them, and that authority is held by the FRA and not to them. They did provide some information about the rail cars and the rail cars that were below standards for use here to be able to go and do that. And while they reiterated that they had signed pieces of paper that were the waivers to use those cars, they did speak to some very positive efforts that have been taken to replace those cars with cars that meet standards, to be able to do that, both a 5-year plan to buy the necessary cars, both Washington and Oregon, but also that they have borrowed cars that meet the standard to use in the interim period of time. Wasn't clear how that borrowing, what percentage of the cars on Amtrak Cascades are now running with upgraded cars, but it sounded like it was a significant percentage of the Amtrak Cascades runs are now being done with cars that are more substantial than the ones that were there at the accident. On Saturday, I went to Telecom for the dedication of the Habitat for Humanity house that had completed construction. And that was a milestone house, in that it was the 33rd house in their Telecom project, and also the last piece of land that they own there. And so they're moving on from Telecom to some other areas of Pierce County, and until there's some ability to come back to do that. It was also a very interesting thing over there, because the homeowner there had been working and doing the necessary sweat equity on the house, and had been doing that, but had not told their children that this was a house that they were going to move into. And so the children didn't find that out until Saturday, when they came, and they were informed that this was going to be their house and their bedrooms and things to do that. So it was a dynamic that I hadn't seen at any of the other dedications, and that was maybe significant for a capstone project for here in Lakewood. That's all I have, Mr. Oh no, I do have one more thing. We are The Lakewood Sister Cities Association and the city are moving forward with developing itineraries and plans for guests from Gimhe, a delegation of 5, and some guests from Okinawa City, a delegation of 3. With respect to the guests from Gimhe, in looking at the custom of exchanging small gifts to do that, that I had talked with the mayor, and there is the city tree for Gimhe is the ginkgo, and of course ours is the oak, and that we can for $25 get crafted a pen made by one of the vendors at the farmer's market who creates wooden pens, being able to go do that, and he can create a pen that is on 1/2 ginkgo and 1/2 oak. It would seem that if we as council members would chip in $27.50, we could get one for each of the visiting things, as well as send one back to the mayor and the council president. The deputy council president and the deputy mayor are with the delegation that's coming. And I would think that that would be something that it would be appropriate and courteous for us to do.
Round it up and make the assessment $30, and we can keep track of it. Okay. Comply with our very limiting, I should say, gift laws.
Well, I mean, and it would help our math challenge to.
You're going to be the repository for our donations.
I shall, and I will work with Mr. Clausen, who is the farmer's market vendor, to do those.
Great idea. Mr. Whalen?
Sure, just a couple of things. As you know, I was out of town, in part on business, in part on vacation. The business part, I attended the Paris Air Show as part of the Pierce County State of Washington Department of Commerce contingent to touch base, network, and solicit businesses within the Boeing supply chain to locate in the South Sound, specifically Pierce County. So a quick summary of the work that we did with our contingent. We had 61 total company meetings with companies from around the world. 11 of those turned out to be somewhat what we call hot leads, 35 of which are warm and 13 are mostly cold. A hot lead is one that's the company's likely to require near-term assistance in the form of information regarding land availability, workforce, and in tax incentives, which are few in the state of Washington. But several of them expressed interest in scheduling a trip to visit Pierce County, and so we're working on those leads right now, and I will keep our city manager and Becky Newton informed as part of the Pierce County contingent to hopefully receive some folks who might have interest not just in Frederickson, within the greater Pierce County, but also hopefully the South Sound, including Lakewood. So that was a good trip. It was a busy time and a lot of walking around for a guy who's got, a back issue, so it's a lot of walking around. 4th of July is, coming soon. As many of you have likely received a bunch of comments from folks on the fireworks issue, so I assume that our police department will be certainly out there on task, along with the folks from West Pierce, to make sure we keep a safe and sane 4th of July season. And I am most certain that after the 4th of July, we will receive yet another round of comments and interests in looking at the fireworks issue, which I know our PSAC committee is doing. So I look forward to the feedback on that. On the business side, I talked about my trip. On the public or the personal side, we went and visited several locations within Italy that had a lot of cool public art. And so I'm going to tell you more about that when we have a time to talk about the process by which we're reviewing public art submissions for the Colonial Center. But suffice it to say, public art is a big part of culture abroad and has been for centuries. So it's not unusual for cities to embrace, pieces of public art, or the public to actually embrace the art as well. And my final question, not really a comment, but a question, as I was driving here, Mr. City Manager, on Decoven, the street is really torn up, so I don't know if there's some utility infrastructure improvements being made, but resurfacing of that road has not been on our project list, as far as I know, so, yeah, is there a plan? Because it is a mess.
So, yeah, that's not a city project. That's actually, the gas company, I believe, is putting in, upgrading their lines, and then they'll come back and then redo that.
They'll do their appropriate repair and patchwork or whatever, because it's going to be significant. Yeah, thank you.
So we're going to have to scale back the Trevi Fountain if that's going to be your water feature.
That'll be my recommended public art piece.
Might be a little much.
Yeah.
Just a small little bit.
I just note that with respect to WashDOT's backpedaling on we don't have any control argument, that they do have control of the one thing that's the most important, that is putting the train back on that track before everything's done. So it's just because they can't implement a unilaterally implement a safety improvement doesn't mean that they can't wait for that safety improvement to be made before they run it. And so I put us on to challenge us to challenge them anytime they try to take the cop out. On the 26th, I had the pleasure of attending a reception for General Marianne Miller, the commander of the Military Airlift Command, the big boss of the C-17s and everything that moves freight in the Air Force. As of this moment, she is the only female 4-star on active duty in any service. Quite an accomplished glass ceiling breaker. Impressive lady. Today, I met with the president of Bates, and Mike can correct me, the head of the downtown campus. I don't know whether
the dean for the downtown.
Dean of the downtown campus, and the head of their fire service training program. Most of the meeting was about the interest they have in placing a fire training facility out at the Roy Y on JBLM property, where JBLM is offering up some land, I understand, that was land that wasn't commercially valuable enough to be useful in the land swap idea. It just wouldn't generate enough because they didn't want it to be residential property. They wanted it to be a buffer between the training area and the residential property out there. But that was quite interesting. I learned more about Bates that I didn't know, and good to get acquainted with those folks. There's something else, but it flew by me. And I understand you're in need of an executive session. Is that true?
Yes. So the council, we're requesting an executive session for 15 minutes to
15 minutes?
discuss potential and.
Okay, so we will now recess into executive session for a period of 15 minutes pursuant to RCW 4230 110(1)(I) to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency litigation or potential litigation to which the agency, the governing body, or a member acting in official capacity is or is likely to become a party when public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the agency. The council is not going to take any action following the executive session other than to adjourn. We're now in recess.
Kathy, good to see ya. How's life? Good?